Business leaders should be thinking about international trade because we're entering a period in which there are likely to be higher tariffs, which are taxes on what's being traded both between the United States and China, but also between Britain and the European Union, depending on the outcome of Brexit negotiations. So for British businesses, this is a particularly important issue because of how open the British economy is. The FTSE 100, the largest listed companies, a lot of them have huge proportions of sales which are overseas in global markets. So the health of the global economy affects Britain. The World Trade Organization estimates that if the US and China enter into a full-blown trade war, it would knock off 70% of growth in international trade. To give you some context, the world economy is expected to grow by 3.9% this year and next year. So that's nearly half of global growth that could be cut because of escalating trade tensions between the US and China. I think for British businesses, there are a couple of things to really bear in mind to be on the front foot. The very first one is check your supply chains. So how much of your supply chain would be affected if you had increase in costs in terms of intermediate components? And the second thing is knowing that the US-China trade tensions don't look like they are abating anytime soon, how robust are your M&A decisions, your investment decisions? So think carefully around scenarios for your businesses, and I would say plan accordingly. Now, in terms of Brexit, British businesses, to be on the front foot, should look closely at what the WTO rules are for international trade. Are you familiar with WTO schedules, the tariffs? Is your business affected by tariff rate quotas? Do you have the IT capacity, the personnel capacity to deal with a higher level of customs at that point if the UK were to leave without a deal with the EU? Another area I think British businesses should be looking at is right now, the world's second biggest economy, China, is developing its services sector. So it may be the world's biggest manufacturer, but services are actually a bigger part of the Chinese economy, and that goes hand in hand with becoming a middle income country, in fact, upper middle income in coastal urban areas. So in this sector, it looks like China is looking for expertise to develop an entire range of its services sector, from insurance to retail. Britain is the second biggest exporter of services in the world after only the United States. So I think there is a way to look at current trade tensions and see some opportunities within what looks like a fairly big crisis between the world's two biggest economies. That, I think, helps Britain become well placed to think about partnering with China to develop China's services sector. So Britain is mostly a services economy, very high-end, very high-tech when it's linked to manufacturing. China is developing a services sector. It needs greater efficiency in that services sector, but it's obviously the world's biggest trader. So there are complementarities in terms of how the two nations can trade and invest with each other and partner with each other. So that is an exciting area, I think, especially for British businesses to really focus on in the coming decades. And that's not the only area to be excited about. The other area is digitalization. So 5 years ago, virtually, really very little international trade was done via e-commerce. Today, 1 in 8 cross-border trade is done via e-commerce. Britain is in a really good position to be a leader in terms of setting some of these standards, in terms of taking the traditional strength in being plugged into international trade and help to facilitate a greater amount of digital trade as well. The UK is already a global hub for financial services, but it could be a global hub for services trade. So I would suggest as a business to think about tariffs, supply chains, investment, M&A, familiarizing yourself with WTO rules, working out contingency planning for a bit of a muddling through on Brexit, and then opportunities, focusing on what the 21st century global trading system could do around services and digital trade, and making sure your business is well positioned for it.